Hey guys, I'm Marcie Billen. I'm a real estate agent in Oklahoma. You may have seen some of my other videos, especially about Oklahoma real estate contracts. So in this video, I wanted to explain to you the TRR process. So TRR is Realtor speak for treatments, repairs, and replacements. And I really try not to use our Realtor lingo whenever I'm talking to clients because you guys don't do this all the time. However, that is what we call it. And most people know kind of what we're talking about when we say TRR. So let me show you the part in the contract where the TRR is located. So TRR is right here on letter C. And whenever I go over contracts with my buyers, which is before we even start looking at houses, because I think it's really important to get your questions answered, I go over this part. And it's something that I review with them again and again as we get through the process. So I view the TRR as the second wave of negotiations in a real estate contract. Okay, so number one, treatment of termites and other wood-destroying insects. Treatment and repair costs in relation to termites and other wood-destroying insects shall be limited to the residential structure, garages, and other structures as designated in paragraph 13 of the contract and as provided in subparagraph C2B below. So fun reading contracts. I love it. Okay, so what is paragraph 13? Well, let's go take a look. So paragraph 13 is this. It's empty because this is where we write in how we're going to deal with termites on a house. We can also deal with it on the actual TRR page itself, which we're going to show you here, or I'm going to show you here in just a moment. Okay, going on to the next paragraph. Treatments, repairs, and replacements review. Buyer or buyer's broker, if applicable, within 24 hours after expiration of the time period referenced in paragraph 7A of the contract shall deliver to seller in care of the seller's broker, if applicable, a copy of all written reports obtained by buyer, if any, pertaining to the property, and buyer shall select one of the following. I know you guys heard all of that and can repeat it back to me verbatim, but if you can't, so here's what's going on here. So the buyer's broker, that means the real estate agent, within 24 hours after expiration of the time period referenced in paragraph 7A. What is that? It's right here. Buyer shall have 10 days after the time reference date to complete any investigations. If our inspection period starts on the 1st, then it ends on the 10th. That's all it means. Okay. So for me as a real estate agent, I keep these dates in my calendar and I look at them every day like a crazy person so that I don't miss anything for you. So we deliver the repair list, which is basically just a blank sheet of paper, but I'm going to show it to you here in a second. And then we also deliver all of the reports that we got. So home inspection usually, and then there might be others like the pest inspection. Okay. All right. So 2A says, if in the sole opinion of the buyer, results of investigations, inspections, or reviews are unsatisfactory, the buyer may cancel the contract by delivering written notice of cancellation to seller in care of seller's broker, that's the real estate agent, and receive a refund of earnest money. So you don't have to send a TRR. You can just break the contract as a buyer. That's what that's saying. And you should receive a refund of earnest money. That is what that says as well. Okay, 2B is where we're talking about the actual TRR. You ready? Buyer, upon completion of all investigations, inspections, and reviews, waives buyer's right to cancel as provided in 7C2A above by delivering to seller in care of seller's broker, if applicable, a written list on a notice of treatments, repairs, and replacements form of the items to be treated, repaired, or replaced, including repairs caused by termites and other wood-destroying organisms that are not in normal working order. So I always read this out loud to my buyers because I think it's really important. This is about if the system is in working order. Defined as the system or component functions without defect for the primary purpose and manner for which it was installed. So like if the air conditioner isn't blowing cold air, then it's not working as it should be, as it was intended to be. So that is a problem, is it not? Defect means a condition, malfunction, or problem which is not decorative that will have a materially adverse effect on the value of a system or component. Air conditioner, a toilet that's broken, that goes on a TRR if you want it to, of course. If you don't like the carpet, that doesn't go on the TRR. If the carpet is causing a trip hazard because it's not stapled down correctly or glued down correctly, then it goes on the TRR. Do you see the difference? Buyer and seller shall have 7 days after the seller's or seller's broker, if applicable, receipt of the completed TRR form to negotiate treatments, repairs, and replacement items. So once you deliver this list to the seller, we have 7 days to negotiate. If a written agreement is reached, seller shall complete all agreed treatments, repairs, or replacements prior to the closing date at seller's expense, unless otherwise agreed on in writing. If a written agreement is not reached within the time specified in this provision, the contract shall terminate and the earnest money returned to the buyer. So yeah, theoretically, there's 7 days. Can it go longer? If we're still negotiating, I have seen it go longer several times. Usually it takes less than 7 days though to get this done. Okay, so let's take a look at what the TRR form looks like. So this is a TRR page. This is what it looks like. It's basically a blank piece of paper. So at the top goes the address. This notice is provided in accordance, the blah, blah, blah. Yes, we understand. So it's referring back to the contract. Attached are the reports obtained by the buyer. I tend to send my reports a little bit earlier than this, but a lot of people send them at the same time as they send this TRR form. And then there's boxes to say whether wood destroying insects need to be treated or not. And wood destroying insects does not always mean termites. There's lots of different types of wood destroying insects. Payment of treatments, repairs, and replacements shall be as provided in the contract, which is by the seller. The seller pays for what we outlined here. Buyer and seller shall have the time agreed to negotiate items to be completed prior to the closing date, as stated in the investigations, inspections, and review paragraph, which was 7 days. That's right, you remember. Okay, so let's look at how I would fill out one of these. So here's a TRR that I'm actually closing really soon. And this one is one that the seller agreed to everything. So there was no negotiations on this TRR. You can see that it's quite a few items that we got the seller to go ahead and repair on this house. So let me just read a couple of these for you to give you examples of things that we go after on these TRRs. So the first one is the front hose bib faucet leaks. So the outdoor faucet, it leaks at the stem, which is the part, that comes out of the house. Seller to repair or replace the faucet as needed to ensure there are no leaks. So I kind of put in like, hey, this thing shouldn't be leaking. Whatever you have to do to make it not leak, that's what we want, because that's what my buyer wanted. Okay, and then this one was interesting because our inspectors couldn't get to the electrical panel whenever they were out there. So one of the things from what they could like open the panel door, but they couldn't take the cover off. Like that was the problem. So it says seller to label breakers in electric panels since shelves were inhibiting full inspection of the panel. Because in order to get a full inspection of the panel, we have to be able to take the cover off. So other things I wrote in here, determine if there are any missing knockouts, double taps, or wrong size breakers. Really, really common things for us to see on an inspection report. But because they couldn't take the cover off, they couldn't see these problems. Okay, I also wrote in here to determine that the panel is serving its purpose in adequately routing the electricity supply through the house and will trip if needed, meaning that the breakers will turn off if they get overloaded with electricity. If any issues with the breakers or supply as mentioned are found, then the seller shall make those repairs and deliver a completed invoice to the buyer at least 1 day before closing, which I already got all of those from the seller so that my buyer can see them. This part right here, I had a really hard time with because I usually know what's going on behind the breaker itself. So like behind the breakers, because we can take the cover off. So I had a hard time coming up with this kind of language, but it worked out really well. And the seller, I think, understood what they needed to do in order to correct the issue. Okay, I'm going to move on to a different one so we can see a little bit more of the back and forth. Here's another TRR that we had to go back and forth a little bit with. So the original things so I had the listing on this one, meaning that I did not write this original one. This was somebody else. So it says, seller to have licensed electrician evaluate the electrical box and make all recommendations of the licensed electrician, as well as have the licensed electrician install GFI outlets to the interior and exterior of homes. So GFI outlets are meant to protect the house. It's a safety item. This was not something that my seller was going to do on the house. So we went ahead and marked it out. That's why it's marked out on this top line here. And then everyone has to sign it. Everyone has to initial. So that's what the blurred spots are there. They also asked that a tub leak under the jetted tub and primary bath would be corrected by a licensed plumber. We didn't really see a need for a licensed plumber to do that work. And so we marked that out. They agreed that a licensed plumber did not have to do that work, and my seller fixed it. And then they wanted a storm shelter removed from the backyard. That was number 4. We decided that that was not going to happen. And so we marked that out. So this is what negotiation looks like for the TRR. And there's a lot of phone calls involved as well. This is how we rewrote the GFCIs on this TRR. Seller to ensure that double taps are corrected in the panel. So double taps in a panel, like if you're an electrician, you know, but basically it's like when too many wires are underneath one breaker. Seller will ensure all bathroom, garage, and outside outlets will be protected by a GFCI outlet. So that's how we came back from number 1 and changed it and negotiated that out so that the seller could make that repair in a way that was suitable for everybody. As you may have guessed, sellers are not required to agree. That is what I wanted to show you with this. And buyers don't have to agree with what the sellers don't want to do. So then what happens if we can't come to an agreement? The buyer can break the contract, and the contract says that they get their earnest money back. We already read that earlier, remember? We covered who pays for repairs. The seller pays for these repairs. Now, sometimes my buyers go ahead and agree that they want to make the repairs themselves after they move into the house. And so they'll go ahead and ask the seller for a certain amount of money to cover the repairs. This happens a lot. As you saw in these TRRs that I went over with you, sometimes I ask for licensed professionals to do the work, and sometimes I do not. It depends on what my buyers want to do. One thing that I make sure to explain to my sellers is that they don't need to fix anything on their house just because a buyer has submitted a TRR. So they submit the TRR to ask for the things to be done, but then we have to go through the process of going back and forth. If you start making repairs right then and there when you get the TRR and you don't want to make all of them, well, the buyer may not agree to that, and then the contract may bust anyway. So always wait to start making your repairs until after you have an agreed upon TRR. Right before closing, I mean like the day of or the day before usually is what happens in Oklahoma. The buyer goes into the house and makes sure that the fixes, the repairs have been done. Now, can you have the inspector go back and do this? Yeah, for a fee. Most people don't do this, but you absolutely can. If you have more questions about the TRR, please drop them in the comments below. And if you haven't watched my other videos on contracts and the buying process in Oklahoma, I think you may want to check those out. Thanks so much for watching.